It's week 17. It's the fantasy football decider. There is no more important time than to nail those streamers. So we get into them all on the fantasy first down. Welcome to the Fantasy First Down. I'm Ben Wasley, and Merry Christmas to you, your family, and your friends. And welcome to the Streamers Show. There will be no stashes for this week because there should be no fantasy football in week 18. So, with your fantasy finals on the line, it's time to get into all the best streamers for this week. If you've got any questions, make sure you leave them in the comments below. You can also hit me up on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down. I answer all your questions over there. Or you can tweet me at Fantasy First Down with no O. My rankings are up at ffdfantasyfootball.com. And of course, you can check out my articles over at football.razzball.com. Plus, it would be great if you could like and subscribe on YouTube because we've got some excellent out of season content coming up as well. But for now, let's get into those week 17 streamers only. And we're starting off with the quarterbacks. And look, Bo Nix remains available in a lot of leagues, and he gets a fantastic matchup in the Bengals. Outside the top 5 studs and Baker Mayfield, Nix is my favorite quarterback option this week. He's my QB7. He's been consistently very productive with a solid rushing floor, and he'll need to be aggressive through the air to keep up with that rampant Joe Burrow-led Cincinnati offense. So I do like Nix as my favorite streamer this week. If he's not available in your league, though, good alternative high-end options include Jared Goff, Anthony Richardson, and Brock Purdy, who are all solid options. Now, if you need something low-end, I suggest Drake May. This is very much a low-end option, but Drake May is available in the vast majority of leagues, and I want to give those of you needing a low-end option something to pick up off waivers. Drake May scored between 12 and 22 points every week in 4-point passing touchdowns leagues since he made his debut back in week 4 or whenever that was. And that even includes a game where he only threw 6 times. He's got a good passing and rushing floor, and he gets a middle-of-the-pack matchup in the Chargers. You could do a lot worse than the rookie in your fantasy championship. Now, if May's not available or you just don't like this, I also like Bryce Young this week as an alternative, especially if you're in a 6-point passing touchdown league. He's been good the last few weeks, and I do think that he's got a good upside matchup this week. Now, let's talk about running back streamers. And Jerome Ford returns. I listed Jerome Ford as my favorite running back streamer last week. And after his top 10 fantasy outing, I'm going back to that same well. The Dolphins have an excellent secondary, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson can't move the ball through the air. So I think the Browns are going to have to rely on their run game and check downs to David Njoku and Jerome Ford. Ford's a solid running back 2 option this week, especially in PPR. Now, the Saints were truly appalling last week, and that meant Kendre Miller was a little bit of a fail as they took on the strong Packers defense. I'm expecting a better outing against the Raiders, and Vegas, that's the bookmakers Vegas, not the Las Vegas Raiders Vegas, is agreeing with me. They have the Saints as only 1.5-point underdogs, so this should be a close game. Kendre Miller is going to need to be a significant part of this offense for this to work for the Saints, so I'm making him a viable high-end running back 3 this week for me. Also, with running backs, we've got Isaac Guerrero, who seems to be back this week. Now, it's very difficult to start any running back against the Lions, but it does seem like Guerrero's healthy, and we know the 49ers are willing to give him pretty much every snap, as we saw in Week 15 when he's healthy, and Week 14 as well. I anticipate a solid volume outing. There is touchdown upside there as well, and a middling floor. We know that Kyle Juszczyk is taking a lot of the third downs. Wouldn't expect too much of Patrick Taylor, especially after he disappointed last week. So Guerrero's my RB21 this week. I don't love him, but he is a solid option. And I also don't mind the 2 Vegas guys, Alexander Madison and Amir Abdullah. Ordinarily, a running back facing the struggling Saints would be fantasy gold, but not this week. The Raiders are using a full-blown committee at the moment. and I don't love that. Alexander Maddison is getting a small majority of snaps, while Amir Abdullah has been slightly more efficient, getting a lot of the passing down work. This could all flip around in week 17 because they've both taken on both roles at times this season. It does make both players risky but upside plays in your fantasy championships. I've got Maddison as my running back 27 and Abdullah as number 36. Though he's a little bit higher in PPR because I do think he's the more likely of the two to get the receiving work, in particular the 2-minute downs. Now, wide receivers, and nailed it last week. Keenan Allen's blown up in some great matchups. I had him very high as my favorite streamer last week, and he was the wide receiver 2 on the week. That was against the Lions, who are a fantastic slot matchup, and he's taken them on twice and the Vikings once in the last month, and he has been fantastic throughout that time. Likely for Allen owners, though, the role should continue this week. He's taking on the Seahawks, and they've considered most of their fantasy points to the slot, which is where the veteran Bear plies his trade. So after his week 16 number 2 finish, I'm expecting another great week from my former favorite Las Vegas Charger. Adam Thielen is another good player who was also an awesome player when he was over at the Vikings. Now, obviously, he is at the Panthers. And just last month, he ripped the Buccaneers for 99 yards and a touchdown on 10 targets. Now, this started a streak of top results, and over those last 4 weeks, Thielen's actually the PPR wide receiver 15. So he's a risky play, but he's a high upside play, especially in PPR for the final week of fantasy. We know the Bucs are a good wide receiver matchup, so I do expect that he's going to be very solid. Jaden Reed's been disappointing at times recently, but the Vikings have conceded the most fantasy points to wide receivers so far this season, and Jaden Reed has already contributed some of that. Way back in week 4, remember then? Reed destroyed Minnesota for 141 yards and a touchdown, most of them through the air. His second biggest game outside his week 1 blow-up. A repeat performance would be a surprise as the slot receivers cooled off a lot since then, but I'm bullish on his prospects for this week, and he does slot in as a wide receiver 3 for me, but he has a lot more risk than most weeks. And once again, I want to give you like a bargain basement option, some high upside option that's going to be available in the vast majority of leagues. For those of you who are badly chasing points after your tough Christmas slate or dealing with injuries or just struggling to fill your roster. I know I've got one league where I've just been smashed with injuries. I've got very good high end, but ultimately I'm still an underdog because of all those injuries. And Marvin Mims is a guy I'm definitely considering in that league as well. He's seen a significant increase in snaps of late, while he continues to see touches schemed up for him every week. This has led to a string of solid performances, with another very possible against the leaky Bengals. But be warned, his floor is very low and the ceiling's very high. So you could get any number of a variety of options, especially in PPR. I think he's a solid play, or non-PPR is even better. Now, tight ends. Hunter Henry is the tight end 10 on the season. That's a top 10 tight end on the season, and it is still available in half of leagues, according to Yahoo. He's a good, solid alternative if you're planning on relying on Brenton Strange this week. And I am sorry about that. I don't know what happened, but Strange got benched halfway through that game, dropped passes, missed blocking assignments, and it would be a surprise if he starts this week. I think it's going to be some sort of committee of Strange, Luke Farrell, and any number of other players. So Hunter Henry is a viable alternative option, or another guy that for me, I've actually moved past Henry since I updated my tight end rankings today, and that's Chiggy Okonkwo. Last season, you would have heard Bobby Lamarco and me waxing lyrical on Chiggy Okonkwo on the Razzball podcast. We were both exceptionally high on him, and he was so disappointing. It was so frustrating. In fact, I ranked him way too high to the point where it actually kept me out of the Fantasy Pros top 5 accuracy rankings. If I just ranked Okonkwo in an appropriate place where everyone else ranked him, I would have been top 5. As it is, I turned out to be number 7 last season. So it was very frustrating. But Chiggy's finally broken out, even though it's 18 months too late for me personally. So with 21 targets for 140 yards in the last fortnight, there is a high chance Okonkwo booms. So look, someone that's solid to pick up this week. I think he's someone that you could definitely use if you're struggling at the tight end position. And finally, there's Tucker Kraft. This is very much a tight end or bust play. I would keep this to a non-PPR, maybe a half PPR league. Kraft is technically the tight end 7 on the season in half PPR. but he's only had over 4 receptions in a game twice this year, which is absolutely nuts. Getting most of his production in the red zone with a lot of touchdowns, and also just from some big yardage games. He tends to have a lot of games where it's like 3 catches for 50 something yards and a touchdown, that sort of thing. So he's a very risky but upside play for week 17. Now let's talk kickers and DSTs. You know that I say this every single week. And so for the last time this season, start kickers playing against the Panthers. I say it every week. They are the matchup I've been targeting all season, and it has been working. And as an added bonus, Chase McLaughlin's already a top 10 kicker on the season, so you really can't go too wrong here. Another guy who's been fantastic this season is Will Reichard, and when he was out, his deputy Parker Romo, they've consistently been excellent kickers to own this season. The Packers is a very tough matchup for both teams, for most teams, I should say. But in what should be an even and really high-scoring encounter, I'm on board with starting Reichard again, even though it's a fantasy Super Bowl, because I do think he'll keep his team in the game. I think there'll be a lot of points here, and we know they need to kick a lot of field goals. Finally, DSTs. I am like so close in the Fantasy Pros rankings, being in the number 1 DST ranking this season. I'm number 2, right behind Mike McGregor. Very close, going to go into week 17. So fingers crossed on this. Last week, in fact, I picked number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 5 in exactly the right spot. Never done that before. Very stoked with my DST picking last week, I should say, and throughout the season. And this week, I'm taking another big swing, but I'm feeling more confident and emboldened after last week's success. This week, I'm going back to that well and targeting the Browns and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. The Dolphins' defense haven't been good this season, but then again, neither of the Falcons or the Bengals. So it's time to commit to the matchup, believe in Miami to take you to that promised land. And if you can't get them because they're not available, or you just don't trust the Dolphins, or you don't want to be in bed with the Florida man, I would go with the Las Vegas Raiders. The Saints looked truly appalling last week. I know they were taking on the Packers, but we've seen the Raiders shut down teams at times this season. I'm not expecting a Green Bay level performance, but I do think the Raiders are the best DST likely available in your league. And that's it. Good luck in your fantasy finals this week. I hope you absolutely smash it out. I'm in 7 of mine. I can't even remember how many leagues I started the season with. Maybe 16 or 17, something like that. So it's been a good season for me. I didn't win any last season after winning 6 the season before. So I'm hoping to get back to it. And hopefully, given you're watching this video, that means you are also on it this season as well. So good luck for that. If you've got any questions, you can always hit me up in the comments or on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down, especially if it's a last-minute question. Because I'm in Australia, the games start at like 3 or 4 a.m., so I'm very rarely checking the YouTube then, but I will regularly check my Instagram for last-minute questions. You can also check me out on Twitter at Fantasy First Down with no O, but I'm less likely to answer the questions as quickly. Rankings are at ffdfantasyfootball.com. They continually update anytime I update them on the Fantasy Pros app. And of course, my articles are over at football.rasball.com. It'd be great if you could like and subscribe as well. As we get to the end of the season, it'd be a great way to support the channel. Thank you again for all your support this year. I hope you're enjoying Christmas and the holiday season in general. I'll be back for one more video. That will be on our starts and sits in the next day or two. Good luck in your fantasy finals. I look forward to seeing you for one more video in a couple of days' time.